Salutations to the king of ascetics, the sage Vivekananda, who is of the nature of existence, knowledge, bliss, and who removes all our sorrows. Om peace, peace, peace. So, good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to give this talk. It's a bit odd for me. I'm not familiar with the Zoom. The closest thing I've done was during the pandemic. We had, virtual lectures, but even during those times, we used to ask a handful of devotees, those who for work were at the society, maybe 2 or 3 people, to sit in the chapel while we are giving the talk, so that we can address, someone in the front, someone in the middle, someone at the end. And you feel like you're talking with somebody. So, but this is, there is nobody. It's just the camera. So forgive me if I do something wrong. It's just that I'm not familiar with this format. So the subject is facing the monkeys. And I think most of you can guess what we are going to talk about. There's a well-known incident in Swami Vivekananda's life where he is chased by monkeys. So we look at that incident and try to draw some lessons from it. After Sri Ramakrishna's passing away in 1886, August, the young disciples gathered around September, a month later, in Varanagore, in that old house, dilapidated house, and they started the new monastery. And many of them began to wander as wandering monks, depending on God for food and shelter. They wanted to have that experience of complete dependence on God and austerities. So the first such trip that we know about from Swamiji was in August 1888. So practically 2 years after the monastery was established. So he went to Varanasi with Swami Premananda, and they visited all the usual temples, Vishwanath and Mother Annapurna. And then they must have visited the Durga temple, because that temple fits Swamiji's description of what happened. So even today, there are lots of monkeys in that temple in Kashi. So if you go today, you will see lots of monkeys around the temple. It's also known as the monkey temple. So let's see how Swamiji described what happened there in his own words. He described it in Chicago in 1893. He said, "Once when I was in Varanasi, I was passing through a place where there was a large tank of water on one side and a high wall on the other. There were many monkeys. The monkeys of Varanasi are huge brutes and sometimes surly. They now took it into their heads not to allow me to pass through their street. So they howled and shrieked and clutched at my feet as I passed. As they pressed closer, I began to run. But the faster I ran, the faster came the monkeys, and they began to bite at me. It seemed impossible to escape. But just then, I met a stranger who called out to me, 'Face the brutes.' I turned and faced the monkeys, and they fell back and finally fled." So this is Swamiji's description of the incident. We read it in Swamiji's life and we don't pay much attention to it. He was chased by a pack of monkeys and he turned around and they fled. What's the big deal? No? Why should we make a fuss of that? But Swamiji said, there's a big lesson here for all of us. And when you think about it, he was being chased by a group of these langur monkeys. They are rather large. They have sharp teeth. And when when animals get mad, they are not like human beings. They are completely out of control. I read some time ago about a squirrel who was terrorizing the neighbors somewhere in New York. Now, think of a squirrel, it's so small. How can we be afraid of the squirrel? But when they go mad, they will just jump on you and bite you. So this crazy squirrel, it started biting one of the neighbors, and it went through 4 layers of clothing until it could bite the skin. So they're very vicious. Even a small creature, if they're really mad at you, they are very dangerous and very scary. So you can imagine a monkey is quite large and a group of monkeys chasing you. Naturally, it is scary. And we know the end of the story. Swamiji turned around and they fled. But Swamiji didn't know how it will end. Try to put yourself in his place. You are being chased. It is scary. Then suddenly you hear, face them. Will you face them? That's the question. Because you don't know how it will turn out. They may pile on you and bite you, and you will be in real trouble. So Swamiji didn't know how it will turn out. Still he did it. Still he turned around and faced them. And I think probably Swamiji was surprised at the outcome. Here he is, running away from them. Now suddenly he turns around and they run away from him. Now when you think about it, what has changed? Swamiji doesn't have a weapon. The same person who was running away now is facing them. Absolutely nothing has changed except his attitude. He was running away from them. He decided to turn and face them. The attitude changed, and the result was that they fled from him. So it's quite remarkable. When you think about it deeply, it's quite an interesting incident, how he decided to act on that advice on the spur of the moment, fraction of a second, and he must have been surprised. Oh, what's this? They ran away from me, and I was afraid of them. I shouldn't have been afraid of them, because turns out they're afraid of me. So Swamiji said, commenting on this, that is a lesson for all life. Face the terrible. Face it boldly. Like the monkeys, the hardships of life fall back when we cease to flee before them. If we are ever to gain freedom, it must be by conquering nature, never by running away. We have to fight fear and troubles and ignorance if we expect them to flee before us. So this is the lesson that Swamiji drew from this incident. In fact, a couple of years later, he had a chance to practice this again. He was in England in 1895, and he was walking across some fields with a couple of devotees. And suddenly, out of nowhere, a bull comes charging. One of the devotees ran away to safety. The other devotee tripped and fell, and she was helpless. There is no time to do anything. The bull is charging, the devotee is on the ground. Swamiji cannot help the devotee. So Swamiji decided to stand between the devotee and the bull that is charging. And he was thinking about how far he would be thrown back by the impact of the bull hitting him. And then the ball suddenly stopped and retreated. So again, Swamiji did a similar thing. He faced the brutes. He faced the fear. Now, Swamiji is not telling us to do the same thing, but he's telling us that we can draw a lesson from this incident, that running away from troubles does not solve those troubles, those problems. At the same time, we'll see he is not telling us to be reckless. So it's a delicate balance between facing our fears, facing our troubles, and being reckless. So Swamiji mentions 3 types of monkeys. He said, we have to fight fear and troubles and ignorance if we expect them to flee before us. So we can take these 3 as the 3 types of monkeys that are chasing us. There is the fear monkey, there is the trouble monkey, and there is the ignorance monkey. And they are always chasing us. So let's look at them one by one. Fear monkey. There is a composition in Sanskrit called Vairagya Shatakam, 100 verses on renunciation. So there, in one verse, the writer describes the different types of fear that we have. He says, in enjoyment, there is the fear of disease. How? Well, we see that always we have the tendency to enjoy, but we are held back by the fear of disease. Any type of enjoyment. You eat sweets, but then you are afraid of getting diabetes. So anything you do, there is always this fear that if I go too far into enjoyment, I will get disease. I will get some kind of health issue. So then there is, in social position, there is the fear of scandal. Again, we can understand this. A person who is famous, they will be very afraid of anything embarrassing becoming known, because their life will be ruined. It will be the end of their career. So the higher our social position, the more famous we are, the more in the public eye we are, the more the person will be afraid of scandal. So in social position, when you are at the higher level of society, you are afraid that there may be some scandal. In wealth, there is the fear of kings. In the old days, if you upset the king, he can take everything from you. He has absolute power. So the wealthy in the old days, they were very much afraid of the king. So if you have money, you're afraid of the king. In honor, there is the fear of humiliation. Again, in the old days, they used to challenge to a duel, life or death. So 2 people will shoot each other. Why? Because it's better to die than to live in dishonor. For them, honor is the most important thing. So in honor, there is the fear of humiliation. In power, there is the fear of enemies. Again, this is clear to understand. Now, the average person may not have enemies. They may have people they don't like, but the average person, I rarely hear somebody say, I have enemies. But if a person is the CEO of a big company, he may be a saint. He may be the best, the nicest person in the world, but they will have enemies. Why? They have power. And somebody else will want that power. And they will try to, by hook or by crook, try to get him out of his position of power. So wherever there is power, there are enemies. And if you are in a position of power, then you are afraid of who your enemy will be. A good example is the politicians. Politicians are always afraid of their political rivals, their enemies, and they all have their enemies. Then in beauty, there is the fear of old age. Again, there is no need to be afraid of old age and losing one's looks. But the more a person is attached to their looks, the more they will dread old age. So in beauty, if a person is attached to beauty, they will always be afraid of old age. In learning, there is the fear of other scholars. They will debunk my theory. And finally, in the body, there is the fear of death. This is the most universal fear. We all have this fear. If you have a body, you will be afraid of death. It is hardwired in us. So the writer concludes that verse by saying, everything in this world is attended with fear. Renunciation alone stands for fearlessness. Now, when you look at all these different types of fear, you find something in common. You can categorize them into two types. So one type of fear is, I am afraid of losing what I like, of losing what I want. So I have wealth. My fear is to be separated from my wealth. I have beauty. My fear is I will lose that beauty. I have social position. My fear is I will lose that social position. So basically, all these types of fear, you can boil them down to this, that I am afraid of losing what I like, what I want. Second type is, I am afraid of getting what I don't want. Getting a disease. I am afraid of getting a disease. I don't want to get it, so I am afraid of it. So all these type of fears that seem to be different, very different, they have a lot in common. What do they have in common? That one type is, I don't want to lose what I like. The other type is, I don't want to get what I don't like. In other words, underlying every fear, there is attachment. It is because of attachment that we have fear. The less our attachment, the less we run after likes and dislikes, the less will be our fear. Now, the next question could be, is it possible to be perfectly fearless? Well, if you're Swami Vivekananda, yes. But for us, ordinary human beings, it's very difficult. So the answer is it possible to become perfectly fearless? The answer is yes, but only if you realize God. Only if you become illumined, if you know your real self, if you know that you are not the body, you are not the mind, you are pure spirit. If you have that experience, then you are not afraid of anything. Swami Prabhavanandaji tells a very nice story in his reminiscences. Once he was traveling in the Himalayas with some Swamis. Swami Atulananda was coming behind him in a palanquin. He was an elderly Swami, and he was being carried in a palanquin. They were in the high mountains, and it was a narrow path. So there was the mountain and then the precipice on the other side. And they were going along this narrow path. And suddenly, there was a rumble, loud noise, and they saw this, the boulders coming down, like an avalanche of rocks and boulders. There is nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to run. They are stuck in this narrow path, and these boulders are coming down in their direction. So Swami Prabhavananda understands the situation, and he decides to look back instinctively. It's like he turns around and he looks at Swami Atulananda, and he sees a beautiful smile on his face, as if saying, yes, I know, and I am ready. So for Swami Prabhavananda, this was a very, had an impact on him, that how is it possible that in the face of death, when it looks like it's the end of it, you can have that smile, that peaceful, beautiful smile. How is it possible? So eventually the rocks just missed them by a few inches. They ducked and they avoided death, but it was a close call. So this Swami Atulananda, who smiled in that situation, he tells a story. There is a book about his conversations. It's called Atman Alone Abides. And there you will find a couple of spiritual experiences that he describes. It's very and it made it to the book. So one of the things he mentions is that I have known states where you could have chopped up my body into pieces and I would have laughed. Now that's a spiritual experience. To think that if somebody chops up my body, I will laugh. It's only possible if you know you're not the body, if your identification is somewhere else. So it's possible to be perfectly fearless, but it's not easy. You have to have this very high spiritual experience. So what are we to do? Fear is part of our lives. It's a natural emotion. We all have to face fear at different times in our lives. Even great souls have to endure and face and overcome fears. There's a nice story in Gandhiji's life. In 1893, in South Africa, he was a young lawyer. He was 24, and he had to visit one of his clients. So he was traveling by train. He bought the first-class ticket. He was smartly dressed, very professional, with a suit, and he was traveling first class. One passenger objected that here is a person of color in the first-class compartment. He should be removed. And the conductor sided with this person who was complaining. So the conductor told Gandhi that you have to leave and go to the third-class compartment. And Gandhi said, why? I have legally bought this first-class ticket. I am entitled to travel first class. But the conductor and all the other staff, they say, no matter, that doesn't matter. We say you have to go to the third-class compartment, and if you don't, we'll remove you from the train in the next stop. So Gandhiji refused to comply, and he was kicked out of the train. So he spent the night, the cold night, in the waiting room, shivering. He felt humiliated, he felt afraid, and he felt very angry. And Gandhiji could have just be bitter about it and get on with his life. But instead, from that point onwards, he decided to fight the system. That system that made him afraid, he decided to fight against it. It's a pivotal moment in Gandhiji's life that he decided, I will resist this system that is trying to make me afraid, is trying to oppress me. So now you will find at that station, there is a statue of Gandhiji. And the Prime Minister Modi, he went there on pilgrimage to see where Gandhiji started with this idea of resisting the system and the segregation and all that. It started with that incident of him being ejected from the train. So he faced the fear, and you see the result, what great results he got. Now, sometimes we need fear. It's part of our lives. Sri Ramakrishna has a saying in Bengali, first I will mention, Lajja grina bhoy tin thakte noy, which means, lajja means fear. No, shame. Lajja means shame. Grina means hatred. Bhoy means fear. So one cannot be spiritual so long as as one has these three: shame, hatred, and fear. This is Sri Ramakrishna's statement. So then in Holy Mother's life, we come across an interesting incident. Once in Holy Mother's house in Udbodhan, the lady devotees became a little bit noisy. And they were laughing and shouting, and it could be heard in the whole house. Now, Holy Mother went to them and scolded them and said, what is this? You are women. This is unbecoming of you. Where is your lajja? Where is your modesty? You should be quiet. So I'm mentioning in the original because Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother use the same word, lajja. Lajja means shame, modesty, all this. It has different connotations. So Holy Mother said, where is your lajja? Where is your shame, your modesty? In those days, women were supposed to be quiet and not be heard. And one of the devotees had a beautiful answer when Holy Mother scolded them. She said, but Mother, Sri Ramakrishna himself says, lajja grina bhoy tin thakte noy. Sri Ramakrishna says we should not have lajja. And you're telling, where is your lajja? You should have lajja. You should have modesty. So in a funny way, this devotee was arguing with Holy Mother. Look, Sri Ramakrishna said one thing, and you are contradicting him. So Holy Mother's reply is very interesting. She said, no. What Sri Ramakrishna said applies to those who are immersed in the thought of God. But I say, so Holy Mother is saying, I say, referring to herself, lajja grina bhoy tin thakte hoy. Let all these three remain: shame, hatred, and fear. Let all three remain. So Holy Mother is directly contradicting Sri Ramakrishna. And then elsewhere she said, no, after that she said, Jara che bhoy, tar hoy joy. Those who are afraid, they are successful. Which again seems to contradict what Sri Ramakrishna said. I think we have to reconcile these different statements. Swamiji's statement that we have to face our fears. Sri Ramakrishna's statement that so long as you have fear, you are not spiritual. And Holy Mother's statement that says, let fear remain. And those who are afraid, they succeed. They are all true. All the statements are true in different contexts. Even Holy Mother, she showed fear in her life. So once she was suffering from toothache, and Swami Saradananda called a dentist to Holy Mother's house. And when the dentist arrived, Holy Mother was nowhere to be found. So Swami Saradananda asked Golapma, go and please find Mother. The dentist is here. Mother is suffering. So after a while, Golapma came back and said, Holy Mother will not come. She will not see the dentist. And Swami Saradananda pleaded with her that please try to convince Mother. She is in pain. But Golapma knew Mother well, and she said, no, we should not insist. She is very clear about it. She will not see the dentist. And that's it. So Swami Saradananda was helpless. He had to pay the dentist and send him back. There's nothing he could do. So afterwards, they were looking for Holy Mother, and they found her hiding under the bed because she was afraid of the dentist. Now, we should not think that the Holy Mother was really afraid. It's a mystery to us. We don't know, because these are divine personalities. These are avatars. So they act like one of us, but are they really afraid? We really don't know. In the life of Rama also, you find that when Sita was abducted, he became disconsolate. And he was wandering in the forest and asking, where is Sita? He would ask the trees, the creepers, the streams, the animals, where is Sita? Where is Sita? So somebody came to Rama and said, Rama, don't you remember your true nature? You are Vishnu, and you are grieving like an ordinary mortal, grieving for Sita. Don't you remember your true nature? And Rama says, yes, I do. I do remember my true nature. But then again, where is Sita? He starts crying again. So that is their play. We don't know. So he remembers his true nature, and still he weeps for Sita. Swami Prabhavananda tells another nice story about anger. Just like fear, these great souls may show fear, but it's not the same fear we have. So there's a story about anger in Swami Premananda. So when Swami Prabhavananda joined the monastery, Swami Premananda was in charge of the brahmacharis. He was training the novices. And once Swami Prabhavananda saw him scolding a brahmachari severely. And the thought arose in his mind, in Swami Prabhavananda's mind, that, this holy man loses his temper. As soon as that thought crossed his mind, Swami Premananda, who had been scolding this, shouting and scolding the brahmachari, he turned to Swami Prabhavananda and smiled, and then turned back and continued to scold. Swami Prabhavananda found that a very, again, striking thing, that he understood he is not really angry. He looks very angry, he acts that way, and he's scolding and shouting, and yet in the middle of it, he turns and smiles at me. That's not possible. If you're really angry, if you're really mad at somebody, that's not possible. To turn around, smile, and then come back to scolding. So with that smile, Swami Premananda showed him he hadn't really lost his temper. So the bottom line is, sometimes we need fear. If you're driving the car and you're afraid of having a car crash, that's a good thing. You will be careful when you drive. You will not be a reckless driver. At the same time, if we are too afraid, it paralyzes us. We cannot move forward. It becomes an obstacle. So how to have a healthy dose of fear that is not too high, but is enough to function in this world. That is our challenge. Swamiji says, fear is one of the greatest obstacles to human progress, spiritually and materially. Not only spiritually, even materially. People who are too afraid, they will never try a new venture. They will never try a new business. They will never risk when they are investing their assets. They're too conservative because they're too afraid. So such people, their fear becomes an obstacle even to material progress. So in spiritual life also, if we are too afraid, we cannot grow spiritually. That is what Swamiji says. So what happens is, starts with fear. I am afraid. Then fear, when it becomes a habit, it becomes worry. We begin to worry about this, about that. I'm worried that I will lose my job. I'm worried that my son will not do well in school. So we are worried all the time about this or that. And then worry becomes anxiety. If we create the habit of worrying all the time, then it degenerates into something else. We become anxious. I become an anxious person. Now, when you become anxious, you forget why we are anxious. When you're worrying, there is a cause. I am worried about this. I am worried that this will happen. Now, when I'm anxious, I forgot what I'm worried about, but I'm still anxious. I'm still, something's wrong with me. So when we reach anxiety, it becomes a lot more difficult to deal with. So nowadays they have easy fixes. They will give you a pill, happy pill, and then you forget your anxiety. But they are not removing the cause of the anxiety. They are only removing the symptoms, the effect. So it all starts with fear. And we saw that it is normal to have fear. We all have fear. If a snake is crawling on me, I will naturally jump and stay away from the snake because I know it is dangerous. It can end my life, a poisonous snake. So it's natural to have fear if a snake is crawling on you. Now, should I be afraid when I look at the photo of a snake? No. The photo cannot do anything to me. So if I am afraid because I look at the photo of a snake, then my fear has gone too far and it becomes an obstacle in my progress. So the important thing to remember is that at the root of all fear is attachment. So if we work on our attachment, if we work on our spiritual practice, our attachment will be reduced. And then our fear naturally will be reduced, and then we'll worry less about the future, and we will not be anxious. We will go through life in a balanced state of mind without unnecessary anxiety. So that would be the first monkey, the monkey of fear that chases us. The second monkey is troubles. Swamiji says, we have to face our troubles. Now, what are troubles? Troubles are things that are in our lives, whether we like them or not. You see, when you look at your fears, most of them, they never materialize. We are afraid about so many things that might happen, and they never happen, except for the fear of death that sooner or later comes to all of us. There are so many fears that never materialize, and we waste our mental energy worrying and being anxious about things that never happen. But when you come to troubles, they are real. They really exist. We really have to endure them. It's part of our lives. And even the saints have to endure troubles and hardship. And I think we could take Swami Vivekananda's life as an example for us of how he had to face so many different types of troubles. First, you have the health troubles. He suffered from many chronic illnesses, insomnia, diabetes, asthma, and he had many other ailments that came and went. He just never complained. He just endured them. Then he had financial troubles. As we know, when his father passed away, he was a young man. And suddenly, as the eldest of the family, he had to provide for the family. The father had been well off, but too generous and did not save for the future. Nobody expected that he would die like that. So suddenly the father is gone, and there is no income, and there is no money. And there are so many brothers and sisters, and Swami Vivekananda is the eldest, and he doesn't have any job experience, and he wants to become a monk and renounce the world. And in that situation, he is expected to provide for his family. It couldn't get any worse. It couldn't be a worse situation for somebody who wants to become a monk and give up everything. So he never ran away from it. He faced it. And he pleaded with Sri Ramakrishna until Sri Ramakrishna promised him that they would be okay. They would have the wherewithal of whatever they need, basic needs. So he had to face these financial troubles. He had legal troubles. Some of you may not know, but when the father passed away, one of Swamiji's aunts ousted the family from the ancestral home and sued them. And Swamiji had to fight this lawsuit for many years, 14 long years. Now, he could have said, I'm a monk. I don't want to have anything to do with this. But no, instead of running away from it, he faced it and he dealt with it for 14 years. And you know when he settled it and resolved it? 28th of June, 1902, which means days before giving up the body. He gave up the body 4th of July. And on the 28th of June, 1902, he put an end to the lawsuit and had to give some money to the other relatives and finish the business. So he was a monk. He was a realized soul. He was a world teacher. And still he had to be involved in litigation and all the troubles that come with the lawsuit. But he never ran away from it. He dealt with it. He faced it. Then he came to the West to preach. And he had other types of troubles. The Christian missionaries soon found out that this guy is bad for our business. We collect money for our missions to convert the heathens in the Eastern world. And this man is telling things that undermine this our fundraising efforts. And these many people are becoming attracted to his message. So what they did, they started circulating rumors and slandering Swamiji, that his character is not good, that he has done this or that. Now, you can imagine Swamiji is a young man in a foreign country. He has no way to prove his innocence. There's nothing he can do to defend himself, absolutely nothing. He has to put up with it and get on with his life, continue giving lectures and talking to whoever is interested. There's nothing he could do. So he had to put up with that slander in a foreign country. Now, he goes back to India and he finds he is misunderstood by his own brother disciples, another type of trouble. So his brother disciples could not understand Swamiji's ideas. They thought, you have been in the West, you have been influenced by their culture, and now you're talking about the Ramakrishna mission and all these things, doing work. One of the first monks to object to his ideas was Swami Yogananda. He told Swamiji point blank that Sri Ramakrishna said that we should spend our time and energy meditating on God, practicing our sadhana, doing our spiritual practice, and you're telling us that we have to work and organize. So the accusation was, these are your ideas. These are not Sri Ramakrishna's ideas. And again, Swamiji had a hard time convincing them that no, these are not my ideas. This is what Sri Ramakrishna wants. This is Sri Ramakrishna's work. Eventually they came around, but it didn't happen overnight. Swamiji had to convince them and persuading them. And Swami Yogananda became the vice president of the Ramakrishna mission. So eventually Swamiji succeeded, but he had to struggle to be understood by his own brother disciples. There's another example. When Swamiji returned to India from the West, he was accompanied by some devotees, and he was moving around with some lady disciples. Swami Vijnanananda was particular about this point. He didn't used to mix with people of the opposite sex. So he observed Swamiji moving around with these foreign ladies, and one day he got his chance. He found Swamiji alone, and he told him, Swamiji, why do you move around with these ladies? You went to the West and you mixed freely with all kinds of people. Now you come back and you're moving around with these ladies. This is against the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. So when Swamiji heard this, his face became red and he became very serious. And Swami Vijnanananda, when he saw that, immediately regretted. He thought, oh my goodness, what did I do? What did I say to Swamiji? But it was too late. He has already spoken. So what to do? So Swamiji became very brave. And he told him, what have you understood of Sri Ramakrishna? You think Sri Ramakrishna is only whatever your little intellect has measured. You think you have the capacity to understand Sri Ramakrishna and what he wanted from us and what he taught? He taught you one way. Follow what Sri Ramakrishna taught you. But he taught me a different way. And then Swamiji adds, not only taught me, he showed me. So Swamiji says, he goes further and says, not only Sri Ramakrishna taught me, he showed me. And then he said, Sri Ramakrishna has erased in me the distinction between male and female. So that's a statement that Swami Vijnanananda extracted from Swamiji by telling him this. So Swamiji reacted and told him exactly his state of mind. Normally he would not have disclosed. But Swamiji says, Sri Ramakrishna erased in me the distinction between male and female. So he's free. He's free to do whatever he likes. There's no male or female. Everything is the Atman. So Swamiji was at that high level. And besides, Swamiji also said, besides, did Sri Ramakrishna only come for men? Did he only come for a certain race, for a certain country? Sri Ramakrishna came for all, men and women, for the whole world. So Swami Vijnanananda was really shocked and in awe when he heard Swamiji telling him how he felt. So these are just some examples that we can draw from Swami Vivekananda's life of how he had to face so much trouble in his life. So we complain our little lives about our little troubles. Look at the saints, look at Swamiji and how much trouble they had to face in their lives. Compared to that, our lives are easy. So that is the monkey of troubles. Next, Swamiji says, the monkey of ignorance. Now, are we running away from ignorance? It sounds like hard to understand. Fear, yes. Troubles, yes. But how can we running away from our ignorance? Swamiji explains. He says, what we call mistakes or evil, we commit because we are weak. And we are weak because we are ignorant. The greatest sin is to think yourself weak. All power is within you. You can do anything and everything. So here, ignorance means avidya, ignorance of our true self, of our true nature. Because we are ignorant of our true nature, we are weak. And because we are weak, we make mistakes. And we are always trying to cover this and pretend that life is good and there is no darkness in our lives. There is always some darkness. There is always some mistake. Why? Because we are ignorant. Because of avidya. We have forgotten our true nature. So how to fight this monkey of ignorance that makes us weak and makes us make mistakes? In other words, called sin. So Vedanta says, don't focus on the negative. Don't focus on the mistakes, on the sin. Focus on the positive side. Instead of saying, I am weak, it may be true, but what's the use of saying I'm weak? Vedanta says, focus on the positive. I will try to become strong, and that will remove my ignorance. So Swamiji says that the cause of our mistakes is weakness. We are weak because we're ignorant. Now Swamiji will tell us about this. He says, I am the resultant of all my past, both good and evil. I have committed many mistakes in my life. But mark you, I am sure of this, that without every one of those mistakes, I should not be what I am today. So I am quite satisfied to have made them. Now, what a statement from a preacher, from a spiritual teacher, to say that I am satisfied that I made mistakes. What a bold, fearless statement to say that. Now, Swamiji elaborates further. He says, I do not mean that you are to go home and willfully commit mistakes. Do not misunderstand me like that. But do not mope because of the mistakes you have committed. Know that in the end, all will come out straight. It cannot be otherwise, because goodness is our nature, purity is our nature, and that nature can never be destroyed. Beautiful statement from Swamiji that, look, whatever mistakes we make, they have made us what we are today. And we could say we are spiritual seekers. That's a good thing. So even if we made mistakes, the result is I have come to be on the right track. That itself is a good thing. I am on the right track. I am on the track to God, on the fast track to God. So, but then Swamiji says, I am satisfied I made mistakes, but doesn't mean that I will continue to make mistakes. No. But I will not be dwelling on them. I will not be regretting them. I will not be beating my chest about things that have passed and are gone and cannot be changed. The past is gone. Look forward. Don't dwell on the past. So God knows better what's good for us. And as we struggle spiritually, we'll become stronger and the mistakes will become less and less. When will it happen? The Divine Mother knows. God knows. In the meantime, the Divine Mother is getting her work done. It's a nice Zen story about this. So there was a Zen master who had many disciples. One of them had the duty to collect water for the master. So several times a day, he would go to the well, collect water, and bring it to the hermitage. So he had a pole with 2 buckets, one at each end, and he will carry those buckets on his back on the pole. So eventually one day, one of the buckets sprung a leak, and he was losing half of the water on the way to the hermitage. This went on for some time, and then this bucket got depressed and started thinking, I'm no good. So the bucket talked to the disciple and said, look, I'm no good. I am leaking the water. Only half of the bucket reaches the hermitage. Why don't you replace me? I am no good to do my job. And the disciple said, no, it is going fine. Don't worry about it. You're doing your best. You continue. Everything is going fine. Just continue to do your best. So this went on for some more time. And again, the bucket got depressed. And again, it talked to the disciple and said, no. This cannot go on anymore. I am no good, and you have to get rid of me and get a new bucket. So the disciple said, look, let me show you something. So he took the bucket to outside and showed him the footpath that led from the hermitage to the well, and said to the bucket, do you see all those wildflowers, beautiful blooms on one side of the path? The bucket said, yes, they look beautiful. So the disciple said, well, every day as I carry you and you let the water drip from you, you are watering the seeds that produce these beautiful blooms. So don't worry about it. You are doing just fine. Keep trying your best. No, God knows better what to get done and through whom. But that's a beautiful Zen story when we get impatient about our condition and we would like to be perfect and holy and perfectly pure. Well, God knows better. Eventually, we are destined to reach that state. It's a matter of time. In the meantime, try your best. That's the best thing we can do, to be sincere and try our best. And if we are sincere spiritual aspirants and we make a little mistake, it will prick our conscience. But if you're a worldly person, it will not bother you. Maybe you will not even consider it a mistake. So as a spiritual aspirant, we have a high expectations about our behavior, our personality. So to give you an example, a person could say that my ideal in life is to be a law-abiding citizen. So what do you need to be a law-abiding citizen? You need never to break the law. So long as you don't break the law, you're okay. You haven't made a mistake. So there are many things that are immoral, that are shameful, that are looked down upon by society, and yet they are not illegal. So you can do all those things, and you are still happy that I didn't make a mistake because I didn't break the law. Now, when you say, my ideal in life is to be spiritual, well, that's a different story. Now you have placed upon yourself additional restrictions. It's not just about not breaking the law. Now You see, the law, for instance, the law says you should not steal. So I don't steal. Then I feel very happy about it. Okay, I haven't made a mistake. But if my ideal is to be spiritual, now I say I should be unselfish. Now that's a whole new level. Now I cannot be selfish. Now you will not find any law that says selfishness is against the law and you will go to jail for being selfish. There is no such thing. You can be perfectly selfish and still be considered a good citizen. But when I want to be spiritual, now I am telling myself, you cannot be selfish. And if you are, you're making a mistake. So now your freedom of action has been reduced. Now the margin of error is much narrower because my standard is, my goal is much higher. I don't want to just be a good citizen. Now I want to be spiritual. And to be spiritual, I have to go far beyond what the law says. So naturally, as spiritual aspirants, we will have a high standard, and then we are more likely to make mistakes because our freedom to avoid mistakes is very limited. So we'll continue another couple of minutes because we are already in the 1 hour mark. Let me just add a few minutes and we'll finish the subject. So sometimes I have heard from our devotees saying, the comment has come up like, my pet is better than human beings. My cat, my dog, they're better than humans. And I have to say sometimes that yes, it is true. A dog can be so faithful and so noble. And human beings, sometimes you can't trust them. They will betray you. They will deceive you. So yeah, it is true that in many respects, you can see a pet as being better than a human being. It is true. But then again, the pet cannot rise much higher. They are limited by their own dog body and dog mind. They may be better than us in some respects, but then the human being, although we make awful mistakes, we can also rise above them. That's the beauty of being human. Swamiji says, the cow never tells a lie, and the stone never steals. But nevertheless, the cow remains a cow, and the stone a stone. A human being steals and tells lies. And again, it is the human being that becomes a god. So that is the beauty of being a human being, is that, yeah, we make awful mistakes, but we also can reinvent ourselves. We can turn a new leaf and start afresh and become a different human being. That's wonderful. Swamiji says, there is nothing that is absolutely evil. Our mistakes have a place here. Go on. Do not look back if you think you have done something that is not right. Now, do you believe you could be what you are today had you not made those mistakes before? Bless your mistakes then. They have been angels unawares. Hold on to the ideal. Do not look back upon little mistakes and things. In this battlefield of ours, the dust of mistakes must be raised. Another very bold statement from Swamiji. In this battlefield of ours, this spiritual life, the dust of mistakes must be raised. If you want to do something great, you're bound to commit mistakes. But it shows that you're trying. If you give up, then there is no mistake because you have given up the struggle. The notion of mistakes continues so long as we are struggling. Thomas Edison is said that he tried thousands of materials for the filament of the light bulb, and everything failed. And his assistant got disgusted, and he told him, all our work is in vain. We have learned nothing. And Edison said, no, it's not that we have failed thousands of times. I have just found thousands of ways that don't work. So it's a positive spin. I have learned what doesn't work. It's not a loss. I made some progress. I know these things won't work. So by making mistakes, we are learning this is not the way, and we can do better. And eventually we learn the lesson and we move forward. And the mistakes are left behind. We'll finish with one beautiful statement by Swami. He says, do not give things up. Things will give you up. Gives the same idea. So we saw this lesson from Swamiji's life, that he's being chased by the monkeys, and he faced the monkeys and they run away from him. And he drew from that incident a lesson for all of us. And he says, we have to face also these monkeys that are chasing us in our lives. And he mentioned these three monkeys: fear, troubles, and ignorance. The ignorance that makes us commit mistakes. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Mrityor Gamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace.